I do want to shift and touch on another movement that's very important in the Palestinian struggle, which is the Palestinian prisoners movement. Of course, as we've been covering, Palestinians released from Israeli detention have been testifying to the horrific abuses, including, as you pointed out, rape and torture that they have endured in Israel's prison camps. And late last month, the husband of Khalid Jarrar, a Palestinian leftist human rights defender and a member of the Palestinian Legislative Council, revealed the horrific treatment that she is enduring at the hands of Israeli prison authorities. She's been held without charge or trial for 8 months now, including in solitary confinement, with only a concrete bench and an open pit toilet with no an open toilet with no curtain. And of course, this is just one of the many stints in prison that she has been subjected to, typically without charge or trial. And in recent days, prison authorities have delayed her meals, even though she has chronic health issues and has to take medication on a regular basis. And she said in a message delivered via her husband that she spends most of her time, quote, sitting next to a tiny opening that allows me to breathe. I wait for the hours to pass while I suffocate in my cell in hopes of finding oxygen molecules to breathe and survive. And of course, that's just a small snapshot of the mistreatment and worse that is being meted out to thousands of Palestinian political prisoners by Israel. Can you talk about the prisoners' movement in Palestine and what those of us outside Palestine can do to support it in just a couple of minutes we have, Hatem?
Yeah, this is an important element of our work. I have to admit that we haven't been able to focus on it as much in the last 11 months as we normally do, but we have a national committee at USPCN specifically around advocacy for Palestinian prisoners in Israeli and Palestinian Authority jails. I should make clear. And there's one piece of this with Khalid specifically that I think is really, really important. U.S. corporate media still insists on calling this the Israel-Hamas war. It really, really drives me batty. I'm sure it does the same to you as journalists. But this is an example of a person who, for 6 years, over 5 imprisonments, has been, placed in dungeons by the Israelis. Solitary confinement, as you mentioned, Ali, since August 12th. But she's not uh, from the Islamic resistance movement. She's a Marxist Leninist. She's been criticizing Zionism and the state structures of Zionism and racism and colonialism her entire adult life. She represents a viewpoint that a lot of people in the world don't recognize is in Palestine, that this is a unified Palestinian resistance. I know you'll have John on later to talk about the resistance. I think it's super important for us to continue to say that the unified Palestinian resistance that represents all of the political parties, all of the political ideologies, even all of the social sectors of Palestinian society are the ones who are fighting against this genocide, fighting against this occupation, fighting against this colonization. I think it's important to talk about who she is as a leading national figure in Palestine, a leading feminist figure in Palestine, a leading revolutionary, a Marxist Leninist theoretical revolutionary as well. And so that has nothing to do with Israel versus Hamas. This is a representative of what Palestinian society as a whole is trying to do in their coalitions, in their united fronts, in their unity against Israeli crimes against humanity. And so we saw what happened in Bir Sabah as well. The fact that how could a state defend the fact that its people want to rape Palestinian prisoners, and they go and attack their own guards to be able to get in there and protect the people who were held, who had perpetrated these rapes against the Palestinian prisoners. That tells you all you need to know about Israeli and Zionist society and its treatment of Palestinian prisoners and Palestinians more generally. I always think about the Irish Republican movement when I think about the Palestinian prisoners movement. It was an important part of my politicization and consciousness raising when I was a young person. Some of my most, the most important mentors in my life were from the Irish Republican movement. And I remember vividly reading about the H Block strikers and the fact that they refused to wear prison uniforms because they said we are not criminals, and that is the most important element of the Palestinian prisoners movement, which is that the Israelis try to criminalize the Khalid al-Jarrars and the other 9,500 prisoners that are in prison right now because they want to criminalize the national liberation movement. That's the essence of it, and we have to reject the criminalization of our prisoners as we reject the criminalization of our national liberation movement. It is legitimate. We have the right to resist by any and all means possible, including armed resistance. And so that's what we have to say very openly and very clearly in our advocacy for prisoners. And right now, the struggle is very, very challenging at the time that we're trying to stop a genocide and also to advocate for these prisoners. But keep looking out at USPCN social media. We're going to put out a statement about Canada very soon, and we're going to ask people to do some organizing around it as well. And I just want to give two quick stats before we wrap this up. I know you all have to move on, but between October of 2023, October 8th, and August of this year, 10,300 additional Palestinians have been arrested in the West Bank and Jerusalem, and 8,322 orders of administrative detention in the West Bank and Jerusalem. Administrative detention, of course, for those that might not know, is when Palestinians are held without any charges for an indefinite period of time. That is what we're facing: massive mass murder, mass genocide, and at the same time, this mass repression that is happening in Gaza and, of course, in the West Bank and Jerusalem and all across historic Palestine. So it's an issue that's very, very important because of the political elements of the criminalization of our movement, and it's an issue that we cannot ignore even while we're fighting to stop the genocide.
Thank you so much for that, Hatem. Yeah, it's there's so much going on, but also so many ways that people can plug in. Tell us the USPCN's social media account and how people can get in touch.
Yeah, so we need to find out who does your website because ours isn't great, but it's at uspcn.org. Our social media on our other platforms is much, much better at USPCN on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Follow us there. All of the information about all of our chapters across the country and activism in California and Michigan and Ohio and Wisconsin and Illinois and New York and in the South as well. And follow us there. Look at our BDS work. We've got great BDS campaigns as well against a Zionist corporation called Sadaf and Sabra Hummus, a campaign locally with BDS Chicago, of which we are the co-founders of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what we
It's
got going.
pronounced hummus, Hatem. It's sabra hummus.
Yeah, I haven't heard your Israeli accent in a while.
It's our specialty in Israel. We have
It leaves a
one of
little bit to be desired.
national foods. It's the hummus, also the falafel, which we invented, and other things also. But these are the main ones. We like to eat them.
Actually, the first time we ever met, just to date both of us, 25, 26 years ago, I heard you doing your Israeli accent, and I thought you were an Israeli.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, look, we're allowed to laugh at our oppressors. Just, we're allowed to do that.
Absolutely.
And you do it well, both
Thank
of
you.
you. Yes. Hatem Abudayyeh, thank you so much again. It's always good to have you on and be in conversation with you. And thank you for everything that you do.
Good to see you both,
Thank
and
you, Hatem.
know that we all love the Electronic Intifada. We have for decades. It's a great medium, and you keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks.
Thank you, Hatem, and come back again soon.
Inshallah soon.